Welcome back, Freelancers of the Fear Rescue, and this is another episode of Gear Showcase. So today we're in the Colossus. It's pretty early in the morning, not a lot of people out here, not too surprised. But we'll head out in the Bastion and do a little bit of a showcase. Alright, cool. No one's over here. We'll jump to the forge real quick. Alright, so we're continuing with ordnance launchers. We've done Rubidian's Furnace. We've gone over Vastus Arc. We've also done the Baltic Dome. So we're getting to the final ones in the ordnance launcher one. Today we're going over Titan's Hail. So Titan Hail's is upgraded burst mortar. Special shells burst across a wide area. And its masterwork perk is it creates a large physical explosion for each enemy it hits. So basically, it shoots out 4 volleys. One volley, or it shoots out a volley of 4 mortar shells, and they kind of spread out over an area. They don't all hit in the projectile area, and I can kind of showcase that. But when they hit an enemy, they create a physical explosion. So the word physical is kind of a big deal here because there's different types of damage, and physical is like the same kind of damage that your weapons do. So it's not really blast or impact damage; it's physical. So that's where it's a little bit different. So that's something just to be considerate of. Alright. So we'll see if we can test it out, and I'll kind of showcase it. Okay, so the brutes are here. Alright. So. Well, I already aggroed them. But if you can see, like, the projectile area, up close, they all can hit that area. But if I go really far away, I don't think they'll follow me up here. But if you can see, they didn't actually all hit in that, so it's kind of based on your distance. So if they're pretty close, they'll all pretty much hit in there, but the further you get away from them, the more they'll spread out. So that's something to take into consideration, specifically with a lot of the mortar-style ordnance launchers that Colossus has is they're not very accurate as far as what the projectile is showing. And just a heads up, because I'm gonna stop going through the loading screens it's showing. I've gotten some feedback that these videos are a little bit long, and I was kind of concerned about that too. Making them, I would like to keep them under 20 minutes if possible. So we'll go in here and I'll probably cut through some stuff just to cut down on the time. I would say at this point everyone kind of knows, like if you've seen all the other videos, you kind of know what the game plan is and what we're doing. So from here on out, I'm just going to cut straight to specific increments in the videos, so you kind of know what the effects are without wasting a lot of time. So we'll get to this one. All right. So as usual, we're just showcasing the gear, GM1. Just want to show what it does. So this is your basic outlaw. It takes them down pretty easily. And then you can see there's an explosion. So if you're watching when they hit, they're just doing like normal explosions. But if I hit an actual enemy, you see how like it kind of creates a secondary explosion. So there's the initial impact explosion, and then there's an explosion of its own. The only issue is they're kind of hard to tell because it's like the exact same type of explosion. So it doesn't look any different. Oh. And then here's the thing too. When you're doing that, when you're using the ordnance launchers, and then you let loose one of these, you cannot move. You can direct. So here, I'll hit it here. I can actually direct. If you watch the volleys, I can direct them in a direction. So even though I can't technically move, which there is a way around that, you see how like they kind of like spread out. So here's how a normal one works. If you're staying stationary, they all hit in that general area. Wait for that go off. So if I turn, you can see like they're slowly turning with me. So the good thing about that is you can still project them. Now there's a way out of this specifically, but you have to use your support ability. So when I'm doing this, if I want to be able to move, I have to use my support ability, And then once my support ability is run out, I just press it again, and I should be able to get out of that. Try it one more time. Oh. So actually I can't. So with Venom Storm, that's something you can do. But here I'm using it. I'm trying to use my ability, or my support ability while I'm in it, and it won't let me kind of cancel out of it. So that's something to take into consideration, because with Venom Storm you can, but Venom Storm lasts a very long time. Yeah, it won't let me move. That's weird. I don't use this one a whole lot. I used to use it before the Echoes of Reality, but since Venom Storm's come out, it just does things differently. So I tend to use it a lot more because it suits my playstyle. All right, let's see how it does against a shield. So typically against shields, especially this one, is really good because the trajectory on the projectile is about the same size as their shields. And I'm frozen. Okay. Alright, we're looking for armored enemies. Okay. You see, so when they get really close to you like that, you can't do much. So, like the... Oh, God, I got froze again. Okay. So... it does really good damage against armored enemies. Man, I keep getting frozen. This is annoying. I gotta clear some of these guys out, and then I'll hit that storm. Alright, well, we know what it does against you. Alright. So... oh, I did not mean to do that. Just spamming my spacebar and actually hit my melee. Okay. We'll go ahead and clear these guys out, so we can take on the javelin or the ranger. Alright, so here's a problem with this. In all GMs, it doesn't matter what level you're in. If they play aggressive and you're trying to hit them with this, it's going to be hard, especially if they rush at you. So if they're like constantly moving around, so like right here, I can hit them, it'll be just fine. And it took them down instantly. But if they were trying to rush me while I had this up, I can only slow walk, so I can't really move a whole lot. So if they're constantly like moving, I'm trying to, as you can see, I'm like trying to aim closer. I can't. This is as close as I can get to myself with this. So it's not very good for close quarters. You kind of have to create some space. And if they're being, like I said, if they're being aggressive and they're like constantly rushing at you, trying to do a melee or something, which the Ranger Javelins tend to do, it's a problem. And then another issue with the trajectory is, it's not really an issue in here, but if you have a low ceiling, let me see if I can get it. If you have too low of a ceiling, like let's say you're hovering and you're trying, so like right here, I'm trying to hit the ground. I can't because it has a natural arc to it. You can kind of see that, like, even if I'm looking down, it doesn't matter. It's going to come up and hit me in the face. But that doesn't mean you can't, like, get out of it. It's just, you have to be very aware of your positioning with this mortar launcher. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to cut all this other stuff out, and then we're just going to go straight into GM3. Okay. Let's see if we got some brutes so we can showcase it. We do not, which tells me there's probably an event or something happening nearby, or some other enemies are going to spawn. So we'll head straight in. Just clarify, we're in GM3 right now. No consumables, nothing like that. So while I'm flying in, I'll kind of go over my assumptions. I've used this and I've explored it quite a bit. Like I said, I used to use this a lot more before Echoes of Reality came out and we got a Cataclysm gear for more launchers. I like this. I like using it a lot, and I think it has a lot of good places and builds, and it does pretty good damage. But it's GM3, so typically in GM3 you really need to have a build that has a lot of synergy around one component, or sorry, one gear piece doing a lot of damage, or you need to, and this is all speaking to solo builds. So if you're coming in here with a team, that's going to work out a little different because, you know, a Colossus could come in here and then debuff all the enemies like that, and you could come in with like a normal build that would do awesome in GM1 and now potentially could do great in GM3, but that's support. I'm trying to showcase the gear itself. But I don't think it's going to be doing a lot of damage. We'll test it. Okay, get this guy by himself. So it probably would have killed him. One volley probably killed him on his own, but the problem is he was moving and it's hard to track after because your trajectory leaves. So the reason I think I took both them out is because it hit both them with that secondary explosion. When it hits on, when it hits an enemy, it creates that explosion. See if we can take down their shield with one volley. Okay, so we took their shield down with one volley. So once they get their shield back, it's not too hard, but like hitting them without a shield is kind of hard, just because it's a smaller charge. Oh, and I'm frozen. Okay. See how they like just dive or duck to the last minute, kind of like roll to the left? That's the kind of stuff that's going to screw you over. And then same with like, because they were on a slope, it was hard for me to like get a good vantage point on them. So those are like kind of some of the downfalls to Titan's Hail. Is that if they're moving around or you've got a bad angle on them, like that, like right before I let it off, he moved. I didn't hit him anyways because of the spread, because they're so far away, and they keep moving like right as I'm laying off. So the best place to use this is in like a consolidated group, like right here, just kind of like spamming around to get a few shots off. Not necessarily cleaning them off, but just to helping your team, or kind of like just getting the most out of it. Which the most out of it is hitting. Let me grab this Lego real quick. Is hitting an enemy inside a group of enemies, because then it does that secondary explosion on impact when it hits an enemy type, and then that will affect other enemies that are grouped up next to him. So it's almost like you're getting two hits. So basically, to really simplify that is when one of these mortars hits one of the enemies, it creates another explosion. So that additional explosion will explode in that area specifically, not just on the target. So if there's another enemy type next to them when that explosion goes off, it will affect them as well. So this is really meant for like groups. If you're using this like against, so for example, if you're using this against a stronghold enemy type, I'm about to need some help. It's not going to be nearly as effective as it would be in the group. Going up against groups with this is how you really want to treat it. It's doing good damage, and that's kind of like its purpose. It's really meant to do really good damage because it's not a detonator or a primer. And it does really good against shield because, and I'll show you after I take care of this guy. I'll speak to that at the end because this one does have something specific to it. But as you can see, it's not a detonator. Well, they kind of die from the fire anyways, but you see like this group here, that's really the place you want to spam it around. Which, there are other mortars that are similar like that. That's pretty much what all the mortars are like, except for even Rubidians first, to be honest. That's kind of what you want to do. You want to really spam that around, but let me showcase against armored enemies how it works out. So, yeah, cleans them up pretty easily. Which is really where it shines, just because of the way it works. Oop, I'm frozen. Alright. I think it's just me and the ranger. Let me see if I can get him out of there. Well, I guess it's not a big deal. I have some pretty good stealing clearance. So you see how one of those sort of hit them, but it didn't even directly hit them. It hit the structure, and because they were in the blast areas, radius, it did take down some of their shield, which it took, one mortar took about a third of their shield. Yeah, I'm seeing the same thing about one mortar. But you see how like they're constantly moving? I'm only getting one of the 4 mortars off, so you can see how they're rushing at me now. So this isn't very good against enemies that are moving a lot. And if I could just hit them in general, that'd be beneficial as well. Man. Let me me do something real quick just because I want to get some health back. I don't want to get just automatically down right away. Alright. I'll wait till they get their shield back. You see how they're charging me like right now? I have to step back. So, a full volley, looked like all 4 hit them. It took all their shield and some of their health. Alright. Let's get their shield back down. See, like, every single one of those missed. Closer. See, they just ran from it. Now, they will kind of get staggered a little bit. Man. When you hit them with a mortar, unless they're doing an ult, obviously. But it's doing pretty good damage against, let me get on frozen. Okay. It did pretty good damage against armored enemies. So that's a good takeaway. And the reason it does that, let me get into, show you the gear itself. There's some reasons behind that. Sorry. So right here, so this is the only one I've got right now. I kind of just went through all my inventory and just kind of cleared out a lot of space because I don't like I don't like sitting at like 345 or something, so I got rid of all that. Okay, so this one has a lot of gear damage on it though, so that's gonna skew the numbers. It's the only one I've got, so I didn't really have a choice. 200 gear damage and it has 100 additional charges. So be cognizant of that. Like, I was doing pretty good in GM3. You might not see the same effect because 200 gear charge is pretty much a max roll per a slot. Out of these 4, that's pretty much a max roll for gear damage. So because I have so much gear damage, that can skew the numbers a bit. But the reason that, if you look at this icon, this is a little different. So the actual mortar itself, because it's got this little icon right here, that little diamond is impact and blast damage. That's a damage type, where we were talking about physical. So basically how this works is the mortars on their own do blast or impact damage, specifically blast damage for the Colossus. So there's blast damage. And then it's got this little armor kind of like looking symbol around it. That's because it does more damage against armored enemies. So your typical enemies and your shielded enemies are just going to see like normal damage. However, with this little armor symbol here, it's supposed to be doing more against armored enemies, which I was kind of seeing that, but because I've got such aggressive gear damage rolls, it's purely luck though. There's no way to grind for these other than just going in and playing the game. It kind of was hard to showcase that specifically, but essentially what this is supposed to mean is armored enemies, so like the Ranger Javelin, we're going to take more damage. So this is the way to kind of understand the way the description is working is each mortar does impact or blast damage, so we're going to call blast damage for the Colossus, and then does additional damage to armored enemies. That's just the mortars themselves. Now, the large physical explosion, when you hit an enemy, that is a different type of damage. So you're potentially doing 3 different types of damage with this if you hit an enemy. You're going to do the blast damage, and then if it's an armored enemy, you're going to do armored enemy damage. There's nothing really specific for it. It's just identifying it does more against armored enemies. And then if you do hit them, you'll get a physical explosion in that area where it hit that enemy type or that enemy. So it does quite a bit of few things there. Its recharge is not very punishing. I think it's actually one of the lower ones. That's arc is different, but out of all the mortar cannons or the mortar style, it's actually got the least punishing. Yeah. Venom Storm is similar, but that's one of the Echo Reality Cataclysm weapons, which all of those are pretty much ridiculously great. It's hard to say no to any of those, but getting them is a little different than getting this. And I am going to go over these at some point. But overall, so the difference between these two, I'm just going to go over this really quickly. So with this one, it shoots 8 volleys. And they're kind of like, it's kind of like the Colossus's version of Steam Vent, where it detonates as well, right? So it does acid damage, so it's going to prime them with acid, and then it detonates itself because it's basically Titan's Tail, but instead of doing a lot of, because it does like a lot more damage, almost 3,000 more damage, potentially 4 per volley. This one will actually do less damage, but it primes, which means, and it detonates on its own, so it does two things at once. But the problem is it does twice as many volleys. There's a way to get around that, and I'll showcase that in a different video when I do go over this. But as I can see here, we couldn't do it. We could not get out of the animation. We were just kind of stuck in it. Where with this one, you can get out of the animation, but the downside is the punishing factor is it's 8 volleys, so you have to stand there for twice as long. But like I said, there is ways out of it. You just kind of have to make a build specifically to limit your support ability. Because if you get one with like 3 or 4 charges of support ability, you're not going to be able to do that. But like I said, we'll go over that in another video. But as far as this one goes, it's definitely viable. I just used it the whole time. It falls in that category of it doesn't prime, it doesn't detonate, so it's really not going to show you those big numbers. So kind of when you go into a stronghold, and now you're going one-on-one, not necessarily one-on-one, but like you and your team are going up against like the Monitor or the Tyrant Queen or the Undying or whatever, it's just going to do whatever the damage is. Whatever damage rolls you've got on, what damage it does, that's what it will do. If they're armored, this one might potentially do more, but I'm trying to think. I don't think any of the enemy types are specifically armored. And even if they are, it's still not doing a lot more damage. Where with this, I'm only going to be getting like 60 or 80,000 damage. If I were priming them and then this detonated them, I would be getting like 200 plus or something. Those are just generic numbers. That's not specific. You might see different numbers, but that's just to give you an idea. The combo system within the game, within Anthem, is the preferred way to go. Doesn't mean that these are irrelevant. Like I said, I used to use this all the time, and I've still got it. I was using it here just fine. The only reason I was using Best Defense was just to get my health back. That one, I've got 3 charges on it. Yeah, it's not buffing me at all. So, as far as do I think it's something worth spending coin on? Well, yeah, I would spend some coin on one just to get one if you haven't gotten one yet, or if you haven't gotten one from a legendary drop. I wouldn't spend too much coin on it. I wouldn't like try to blow as much coin as you can to get like the best damage rolls, the best charge rolls, or whatever. I would strictly go with just picking one up just to add it to your inventory if you don't have one already, or maybe if you have an excess amount of coin, you're like, I really kind of like that. I kind of want to try it out. Go ahead, but like I said, I wouldn't waste a lot of coin on it. Well, let's go check the boxes. Okay, we kind of skipped that one. So, is it efficient? Not really. Okay, so we're gonna have that problem where if they're rushing us and getting close and they're constantly moving around, it's kind of, especially if you're on controller, unless you got like really high controller sensitivity, it's gonna be hard to track them. And then if you're in like an area where like there's a low ceiling, you're not gonna be able to really hit over it. As you can see, like my trajectory, like that's too low for me. Granted, that's obvious, but like there'll be other areas or if you're like hovering or something, like there'll be areas where you're not gonna be able to shoot around. You can't shoot from behind cover. Like you can see my trajectory is kind of showing it, kind of going out past it, and it's just barely doing it. And then the other thing is, because you have to use this medium range to be very accurate with it. If I'm shooting potentially medium to long range, like that to me is a little bit medium long range. But if I'm shooting over here, which would be considered long range, like you can see, like they're really spread out. So if you've got an enemy type, like right there where my reticle is, there's potential. Every single one of those could miss it, and now you're missing out on all that damage. You just wasted a volley. So that's not efficient. It's just not. You have to find groups with this. This is the only place it's going to be viable. Well, actually, it's not that it's going to be viable. It's just it's not going to be efficient unless you're finding groups. As far as viability, well, it's not really comboing. So, you know, that's for me. That's always like, well, it only does one thing. It just does damage. That's all it does. It's viable though. It does a lot of damage. It does quite a bit of damage over the one that's potentially better. So I would say that's viable. You can use it. It's not going to hurt. It's not as much as a hindrance. Because it has the lowest recharge out of all the mortars. So that makes it a lot more viable than other options. Rubidian's Furnace could actually be considered less viable than this because it has such a punishing recharge. And the thing with Rubidian's Furnace is if you miss the target, you're not getting anything out of it. So you have to hit two enemy types to get a recharge on that. So as far as the Masterwork perk goes, I wouldn't say this is unviable. This is definitely viable. Is it fun? That depends, really. I don't really use it anymore. You know, I think it's fun. I'm gonna say it's fun. It's just it can be a little to me. And this everyone's mileage is gonna vary on this because everyone's perception of fun is gonna be different. Okay, maybe having like a max like a javelin that's built around your ult, having max ult getting 1.5 million hits per like missile or whatever. That might be what your perception of fun is. Mine is that's not my perception, and that may not be yours. Yours may be something else. Um, but as far as like for me, fun is if I'm like constantly having to reposition myself, get into a specific angle, and meet all these different limiting quantifications to make it work and make it hit. That to me is not fun. Now, if it's a complicated process of hitting them, making sure there's a group of them there, and then hitting those ones with the additional physical blast, and then there's an armored enemy there, hitting them specifically, it's fun for me to do multiple things, trying to figure stuff out, but also being able to get it off. Like, if they're moving all the time and I'm constantly tracking them and they're being real squirrely, it's not going to be very fun with this specific mortar. I'm going to say it's fun, but like I said, that's going to be up to you whether or not you agree or disagree with that. And if you disagree, that's fine. Totally down with it. You live your life online, I guess. But I'm kind of ranting now, and I want to really shorten these videos up. So if you like with the shorter videos, let me know. If you really want to go back to long ones because you want to see like all the extra stuff, like you want to make sure I'm not cheesing it and putting all these consumables on. Or if you even want me to go somewhere else, because I've looked at some other places I think I might start going, let me know. I'm totally open to changing the formatting as long as we're still going over the showcase. So, Undefeated Rescue, and hope to see you guys out in Bastion.